The Hamilton building stood like a gleaming monument to old money Manhattan, its Art Deco facade catching the morning sun. I watched from across the street as my mother-in-law, Margaret Wellington-Pierce, clip-clopped through the brass revolving doors in her Louboutins, deliberately ignoring the construction crew working on the building's west wing renovation. My crew. Mr. Chase, my foreman Diego, called from behind me. The inspection team is here for the 42nd floor. Thanks, Diego. I adjusted my hard hat and pulled out the building plans. And remember, it's just Jack. Mr. Chase was my father. Tell that to Mrs. Wellington-Pierce, Diego muttered. Yesterday she complained to security about unwashed laborers using the main entrance. I smiled slightly. Did she now? Said we were lowering property values just by being visible. Diego shook his head. Can't believe your wife comes from that family. Neither can they, I replied, watching Margaret disappear into her private elevator. The same elevator I wasn't allowed to use, despite being married to her daughter for 2 years. Claire, my wife, worked as a trauma surgeon at Mount Sinai, much to her mother's ongoing horror. A Wellington-Pierce woman working at all was bad enough. Working in a public hospital was unconscionable. The fact that she'd married a common laborer was simply the final straw. Jack. Speaking of Claire, her voice cut through the morning noise. She was still in her scrubs, probably just finishing the night shift. Mom's called me 6 times this morning. Something about you deliberately scheduling noisy work during her garden club meeting. I kissed her hello, not caring who saw us. The schedule was set months ago. All residents were notified. You know she never reads notices from the management office, says it's beneath her to deal with building matters. Claire rolled her eyes. She's threatening to call the board. Let her. I checked my watch. In fact, I need to head up to the penthouse level anyway. Want to come see what's got her so worked up? Claire hesitated. You know I'm not supposed to go up there without an invitation. Trust me, I took her hand. Today, you definitely have an invitation. We took the service elevator, the only one I was permitted to use, up to the top floor. The Wellington-Pierce penthouse occupied the entire level, a fact Margaret never failed to mention at every social gathering. Mr. Chase, the building's property manager, Howard, was waiting for us. Everything's ready, though I must say, Mrs. Wellington-Pierce was quite insistent that today's work be rescheduled. I'm sure she was, Howard. I nodded to my crew, who were setting up their equipment. But these structural improvements can't wait. Safety regulations, you understand. What structural improvements? Claire looked around, confused. The penthouse level was renovated just last year. Actually, I pulled out a set of documents. According to the building's original plans, there are some serious issues that were overlooked during that renovation. Issues that the new owner wants addressed immediately. New owner? Claire's eyes widened. But Mom said the Wellington-Pierce family has owned a controlling interest in this building since it was built. That's what they believed, I agreed, watching as Margaret emerged from her private elevator, face thunderous. What is the meaning of this? She demanded, stalking toward us in her designer suit. I specifically told the building manager that no work was to be done today. And what is she doing here? She gestured dismissively at Claire. Hello to you too, Mother, Claire said dryly. Mrs. Wellington-Pierce, Howard stepped forward smoothly. As per the notices sent out last month, these structural improvements are mandatory. The new building owner was quite clear. New owner? Margaret cut him off. What new owner? This building has belonged to our family for generations. My great-grandfather. Actually, I interrupted, your great-grandfather owned exactly 30% of the building. The controlling interest was held by his business partner, James Chase. Margaret froze. Chase, as in my great-grandfather, I confirmed, enjoying the way her perfect makeup couldn't quite hide her growing pallor. Who passed his shares down through the family, quietly, while the Wellington-Pierce family enjoyed their presumed ownership. That's impossible, Margaret whispered. We would have known. I pulled out another document. Not if James Chase specifically instructed his heirs to keep quiet until certain conditions were met. Conditions like, the Wellington-Pierce family attempting to block necessary safety improvements because they interfered with a garden club meeting. Claire grabbed the papers, her doctor's precision evident as she quickly scanned them. Jack, are you sane? I'm saying I smiled at my mother-in-law. That while you've been treating me like an unwanted intruder in your building, my family has owned 60% of it for the past 90 years. Margaret sank into one of her imported Italian chairs. But you're a construction worker. I'm a structural engineer with a master's degree from MIT, I corrected her, who believes in learning the business from the ground up. Something my great-grandfather insisted on. No hair could take control until they'd worked every job in building management and construction. Every job. Claire was still reading. Wait, is this why you spent last summer working as a janitor? And the summer before that in the maintenance department, I nodded. Had to check off every box before Dad would sign over control. Margaret's hands were shaking now. But all those times I made you use the service elevator were exactly what my family needed to see, I confirmed. Proof that the Wellington-Pierce family had forgotten the partnership that built this place. That you chosen pretension over purpose. The garden club meeting, she said weakly. Will need to be rescheduled, I said firmly. These repairs are essential for resident safety, something you'd know if you ever attended a board meeting instead of sending your proxy. Claire was still processing the revelation, her surgeon's mind methodically piecing together the puzzle. The summer internships at construction sites, the night classes in building management. I thought you were just passionate about your work. I am, I assured her. That's what my great-grandfather wanted, not just owners, but builders. People who understand every nail, every beam, every foundation stone. This is preposterous. Margaret had found her voice again, rising from her chair with renewed indignation. I'll call our lawyers. The Wellington-Pierce family name is on exactly 30% of the ownership documents, I cut in smoothly. Would you like to see the original partnership agreement? The one your great-grandfather signed after James Chase saved the family from bankruptcy during the Depression. Howard, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward with another folder. I have copies right here, Mrs. Wellington-Pierce, along with the minutes from every board meeting where your family's representatives agreed to the Chase family's majority control. But everyone thinks we own the building, Margaret protested weakly. All our social circles, the charity boards, the country club. Ah yes, your precious social status, I nodded. Built on assumptions and appearances. Tell me, when was the last time you actually looked at the building's financial reports, or visited the families who live in the rent-controlled units on the lower floors? Rent-controlled. Claire looked surprised. In the Hamilton? Another Chase family requirement, I explained. 20% of units reserved for working families, teachers, nurses, people who make the city run. Something your mother's been trying to eliminate for years. Margaret flushed. Those units bring down property values. The Wellington-Pierce name means nothing without the Chase family's investment, I finished for her. Would you like to know what else I found in the old records? Letters from my great-grandfather to yours, reminding him that true worth isn't built on a name, but on what you contribute to the community. The construction crew had begun their work, the sound of their equipment a counterpoint to Margaret's spluttering protests. I watched as she winced at each noise, each reminder that her perfect world wasn't quite what she believed. The garden club meeting, she tried one last time. Can be held in the building's community room, I suggested. The one your family converted into a private spa, which, by the way, is being renovated back into community space next month. Claire touched my arm gently. You've known about this all along, even when she treated you like the help. I smiled. My father told me the truth after our engagement, said it was time for the next generation to take control. But first, I had to prove I understood what real ownership means. By working as a janitor, Margaret's voice dripped with disdain. By learning every job that keeps this building running, I corrected her, something the Wellington-Pierce family forgot to do somewhere between charity galas and social climbing. Howard cleared his throat. Mr. Chase, the inspection team needs access to Mrs. Wellington-Pierce's private elevator shaft. There are some concerning structural issues. My private elevator? Margaret looked horrified. But that's my personal. It's part of the building's infrastructure, I finished firmly, and currently not up to code. You'll need to use the main elevator like everyone else until repairs are completed. The main elevator? She pressed a hand to her chest. With regular tenants. With doctors, teachers, firefighters, and yes, construction workers, I confirmed. All of whom have as much right to be here as you do. More actually, since they don't try to block essential safety work. Claire was studying the building plans spread out on the marble counter. These renovations, they're not just about safety, are they? No, I admitted. The Chase Family Trust has some specific requirements about modernization and community access, requirements that are long overdue for implementation. Requirements like what? Margaret demanded. Like converting the private spa back into a community room, opening the rooftop garden to all residents, not just penthouse owners, installing a children's playground in the courtyard. A playground. Margaret looked faint. But the noise, the property values, will reflect what this building was always meant to be, I said firmly. Not just a status symbol, but a community, a place where people of all backgrounds can live and work together. And if we refuse these changes, Margaret lifted her chin defiantly. I pulled out one final document. Then the Chase Family Trust has the right to buy out the Wellington-Pierce shares at market value. And somehow, I don't think your family can afford to match our offer. The color drained from Margaret's face. You wouldn't dare. Try me. I met her gaze steadily. I've spent 2 years watching you treat hard-working people like they're beneath you. Watching you try to push out families who've lived here for generations because they don't fit your social image. That ends today. Claire squeezed my hand. Mom, maybe it's time. Time to remember what great-grandfather Wellington-Pierce and Mr. Chase built together. A partnership of equals, not a social hierarchy. Margaret Wellington-Pierce's perfect world was crumbling faster than the plaster the construction crew was removing. She sank back into her Italian chair, watching as workers tracked dust across her imported marble floors. The annual Christmas gala, she said suddenly. The one where we showcase the Wellington-Pierce family legacy. It will still happen, I assured her. But this year, every resident is invited. And instead of celebrating false legacies, we'll honor the real story of 2 men who built something together. One with money, one with vision, both with respect for honest work. Claire had been unusually quiet, processing everything. Now she looked at her mother with new understanding. This is why Dad always seemed uncomfortable at family events, isn't it? He knew the truth. Your father tried to tell me years ago, Margaret admitted softly. He said we were living a lie, that the Chase family could expose us anytime. I didn't believe him. I couldn't believe that our social position was built on borrowed glory. Not borrowed, I corrected, shared. Our great-grandfathers were true partners until your family started believing their own publicity, started thinking they were better than the people who actually keep this building running. Howard approached with another set of documents. Mr. Chase, the inspection team needs Mrs. Wellington-Pierce to sign these access forms. Margaret stared at the papers like they might bite her. Harrison always handled. Maybe it's time you started handling things yourself, Claire suggested gently. Actually learning about the building you live in, the people who make it work. I wouldn't know where to start, Margaret whispered. I pulled up a chair across from her. Start by attending the next residents' meeting, not as the queen of the penthouse, but as a member of the community. Listen to their concerns, their ideas. The residents' meeting, she looked scandalized. But that's for everyone who calls this building home, I finished firmly, including the families in the rent-controlled units, the maintenance staff, and yes, the construction workers who keep this place standing. Claire sat beside her mother. Mom, remember when you first moved here as a young bride? Before all the social climbing and status games? Margaret's perfectly maintained facade cracked slightly. I used to have coffee with Mrs. Rodriguez from the 10th floor. Her husband was the building's superintendent. She still lives there, Howard offered. Makes the best tres leches cake for the holiday potluck, the one you stopped attending 5 years ago. A tear escaped Margaret's careful makeup. I got so caught up in appearances, in what people would think. Well, I stood up, brushing construction dust from my jeans. Now you have a choice. Keep living the lie or help us restore what the Hamilton building was meant to be, a place where everyone belongs, regardless of their job or social status. And if I choose wrong, she asked quietly, then the Chase Family Trust will exercise its buyout option, and you can explain to your social circle why you're moving to a smaller apartment. Claire shot me a look. Jack. Nonky's right, Margaret surprised us both by saying, I lost our way, forgot what really matters. She stood up, smoothing her designer suit, and did something I'd never seen in 2 years of knowing her. She walked over to the construction crew. "I apologize for trying to stop your work," she told them, her voice shaking slightly. "Please do whatever needs to be done to keep our home safe." Diego, my foreman, touched his hard hat respectfully. "Thank you, Mrs. Wellington-Pierce. Would you like to see the structural plans? Understand what we're fixing?" To everyone's surprise, she nodded. "Yes, I think I would." As Margaret huddled with Diego over the blueprints, Claire slipped her arm around my waist. "You could have told me, about owning the building. I wanted to earn my place here," I explained. "Not through my family name or money, but through actual work like my great-grandfather did." "Is that why you still wear work boots to black tie events?" "That," I grinned, "is just to annoy your mother. Some habits are hard to break." We watched as Margaret asked questions about support beams and safety regulations, actually listening to the answers. Maybe there was hope for the Wellington-Pierce family after all. The Christmas gala, Claire mused. With everyone invited, it's going to be quite something. Yes, I agreed, picturing Mrs. Rodriguez's tres leches cake next to Margaret's imported champagne. It's going to be exactly what this building needs, a reminder that real strength comes from what we build together, not what we pretend to be. As if to emphasize the point, the sound of construction filled the penthouse. Not just noise now, but the symphony of progress, of necessary change, of walls coming down to build something better. Sometimes, I reflected, the most important renovations aren't the ones you can see in blueprints. They're the ones that happen in people's hearts, when they finally understand that true worth isn't built on names or social status, but on a foundation of honest work and genuine community. And if it took a construction worker who secretly owned the building to teach that lesson, well, my great-grandfather would have appreciated the irony.